thriving metropolis of Arrington. I just wanted to, kind of piggyback off a lot of the questions here regarding the Fed and our currency in particular. I guess nirvana of all this is having a debt-free nation. How can we do that under the Federal Reserve System, where our very currency cannot exist without being lent into existence at interest? How can we reach that debt-free state under this current currency model? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, before you answer it, Senator, I just need to close off the broadcast portion.
Okay, so what was the question again, briefly?
The question was that we've heard a lot about the Fed, we've heard a lot about cutting spending, and that's all good. But as you know, a dollar in our current model cannot exist without being lent into existence at interest.
Right.
It seems logical that if we're talking about reducing debt, ultimately the perfection of that goal would be no debt, right? I don't see how we could do that under the current currency model. That seems like we'll be in debt forever.
Let me tell you this. Let me just say that, hey, let's figure out a way to get our debt down to a level that's manageable, somewhere in the 30–35% of GDP at the max, which is a huge step forward from where we're going at 143. And then I'd love to work with you to get it the rest of the way down. But the point is, I'm trying to tackle the fiscal issue through this presentation. I'd love to look at we meet with gold standard folks a lot to understand how in today's world that would actually work. We meet with people on all types of scenarios, and I'd be glad to sit down and talk with you. But the point is, we have a fiscal crisis, and I guess our main goal in this meeting and our main focus right now is just figuring out a way to keep Congress from spending money and sending it the other way. But I'd be glad to listen to other models. Right now we got a crisis that we're focused on, and these other things are interesting and challenging, and they make you think, but this is kind of where we are, and right now I'm trying to work with what we have to get us in a place that has some discipline, and for us in Washington to make some decisions that require some courage.
Our next question.
Thanks, Senator Corker. I'm a musician and carpenter. I just wanted to address one thing regarding the response to monetizing debt and just creating money out of thin air. As that money filters out from the government into the economy, having originated at the Fed, eventually ends up at me, and basically that is what is called a hidden tax, called inflation, which basically steals wealth from everyone in this room, including yourself. So if that is not a construct to keeping people from spending, I don't know what is. In other words, if someone comes forward with an idea that is proponent of an actual solid currency that isn't literally debt, I would request your support.
Thank you. Well, look, over a 7-year period, and everybody knows the math, slightly over 7 years, with 10% inflation, basically your standard of living is cut in half, right? I mean, that's the way the compounding interest and inflation works. And I think there's not probably a person in this country, other than maybe there's a handful in Washington, that aren't highly concerned about what we're doing. I mean, really what we do at the Fed today, what the Fed does, they're printing, they don't even print money anymore, it just appears on a computer, right? They create it on a computer. That computer is reaching over and buying treasuries. And by the way, they make money off that, believe it or not. That money gets returned to the Treasury, but in the process, debasing the heck out of our currency and making all of us, I mean, you look at people that are lower income citizens in this country today, all of a sudden they're paying more for every single commodity that they're having to purchase to live. So I thank you for bringing that up, and obviously we're constantly looking at things like that. I thank all of you for coming.
I want to thank all of you for coming out. Here on the left aisle.
Thank you, Senator Corker. I'm an Iraqi-American. I've been living in this country for 16 years. Statistically speaking, we are spending over $5,000 every second in Iraq. And let me add my voice to this young lady. Stop spending our money. This war cost us, all the economies, about $3 trillion altogether, plus what's coming later on. Why I'm saying that because I lost 7 of my best friends and family in the church bombing. I'm a Christian in Iraq, and 36 of them are injured. Why are we spending all that money in Iraq for what? We've destroyed Iraq. We haven't done anything to Iraq.
So, we're sort of on the downside of that now. We've got 48, well, we got, no, wait a minute, show me. I'm not on that page, I'm sorry. But, we're on the downside of it. We have 48,000 troops there, and we're continuing to withdraw. I would hate for us to have spent 8 or 9 years there with lots of lives, and all of a sudden tomorrow just say, okay, everybody go home, and the government failed. We're almost at the end, and I just think that we need our troops are not involved in the same activities they were involved in before. It looks like there's been a tentative agreement by the government there to be formed. Well, it looks like there's been a tentative agreement over the last 24 hours. And I would prefer that us continue to move out of there methodically, but leave at least something in place that is very different than what we found. I mean, that might have been a great statement 5 or 6 years ago, but today we're on the way out. We are moving out of there, and I'd like to do it in a methodical way.
You say you want a construct. Is a law strong enough to force them to do that?
Well, you can always override the law. I mean, obviously I support the balanced budget amendment, okay? And I know that, that's probably going to come forth this year. It takes about 3 years to get something like that to go through and be ratified by all the states and all of that. I mean, it takes 2/3 of the states to make that happen. So I support that. But in the interim, I'd like for us as a country to agree on where we're going and have something in place that builds a construct in the interim.
This gentleman's been trying to ask a question for quite a while.
Thank you, Senator Corker. Mike, it's really more of a point. You talked about the criticality and how fast we need to move on this. We need to move now on this, and I say this to everybody, including yourself, because I believe it was Indiana who now has more people relying on the government than private industry.
Right.
Imagine where these people put their votes.
I know exactly where they put that.
That's exactly where the rest of the United States is going to go. And then, after that teeter-totter flips, there is no coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, let me give you another. There's no question. I think we're at about 47% now. Let me tell you the dilemma that I deal with daily. I went out to a funeral the other day in Saudi, Daisy, Tennessee. A superintendent who had worked at my company for years passed away. I go out there, and there's a really conservative person in a pickup truck. Okay, I've seen him before. And he says, Corker, God, I love what you're doing on this debt issue. Go get them. And then he pauses, and he says, is there any way you can get half $1 billion over to X? We need some help. That's what we deal with here. It's not just the tax issue, but it's like everybody wants somebody else's ox to be gored. And I think the point of this is for all of us to understand this isn't about your neighbor. This is about all of us. And again, I think what the Deficit Reduction Commission did on some points was at least make people realize how brutal of an issue this is. By the way, they only addressed half the issue over a decade. To do the whole thing is tough medicine.
Senator, I don't know why this reminded, when he said Indiana, I don't know why that reminded me of something I wanted to ask you, but will you guarantee us that the fine folks of Indiana and Nebraska and Tennessee won't be asked to bail out California?
We have a lot of what's called messaging amendments that we vote on in Washington that end up not having much teeth because of the types of legislation they're put on. But we did pass a a resolution that we would not, no, I don't think it didn't pass, but we brought forth a resolution, I think every Republican voted for it, that said we absolutely were not going to bail out California or New Jersey, or candidly, Illinois is even in worse shape.
New
right
Jersey
now.
doesn't need it now they've got Chris Christie,
Well,
so.
yeah. He's done a great job.
California now has Jerry Brown again.
Yeah, so, you know, I couldn't agree more, and
Got
you
what
know,
they deserve.
I'll tell you this, I think all of us need to be sending strong signals that that's not something they can count on, but we'll see what happens. I can guarantee you I will not.